Well, good evening, everyone. That was pretty darn good. Good evening, everyone. And if you'll notice here, this is the set for Hairspray, and Tom could stay right after and go right into Hairspray, but I don't know that I'll quite make that. But I'm Pat Dorsey. I'm publisher of the Herald Tribune Media Group, and I want to welcome to our next edition of Hot Topics, HT Hot Topics, that we like to do on community topics that impact us all. And tonight is on grade level reading, and I know that's why you all came, and it's a very important topic here. But first, let me give a few thanks here. The Florida Studio Theater and its staff are hosts for tonight's event, because this is really a great forum for this. So we're very thankful that they allowed us to use it. New College of Florida, they're our longtime partner in these forums. And then our special co-sponsor of this event, Community Foundation of Sarasota County and the Patterson Foundation, and Roxy and Deborah right over there. So, and you know, obviously both organizations do such great things in our community, and instrumental in bringing Ralph here and supporting the grade level reading and throughout the community. So that's been really great. And of course, the Herald Tribune staff, there's Carrie there, and I know Danielle and Kim are around, and others are around helping out. And they're always the ones that work behind the scenes. Then they just hand me something and say, go up on stage and say this, and always keep me well prepared, so that's great. So as I mentioned, newspapers are really a community asset, and as such, we hold these forums to give our readers and the public an opportunity to learn more about the pertinent issues that impact us all. Tonight, our goal is to help advance a community-wide process for ensuring today's youth are on track to be tomorrow's leader. And really, you're in for a treat. Tonight, this is the third time this week that I've seen Ralph, and I saw Barbara, Dr. Shirley here this afternoon. Of course, she had 4 of her students from her classes here, and they really, I think, were the star of the show this afternoon. They really did a great job. And they really have a powerful message and really know this topic well. And Tom's going to do the real deep introductions on them, but I don't think you can say it too many times that the Florida Principal of the Year was Dr. Barbara Shirley. So that leads me to our moderator, which is Tom Tryon. He's the Herald Tribune's opinion editor, as I'm sure you all know. And this month, Tom will begin his 34th year with the Herald Tribune, and he's moderated these. And he's moderated these forums, so let's see, since 2010. So we've been doing them for a while here. So Tom, why don't you go ahead and take the show? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Pat. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for the nice, warm welcome. I tell you what, we know why we're here, so let's just get down to the facts. About 67% of children nationwide are not proficient readers by the end of 3rd grade, correct, sir?
That's correct.
67%. In Florida last year, 43% of 3rd graders did not read proficiently, according to FCAT 2.0. In Manatee County, that percentage was 49%. 49. In Sarasota County, the rate was much lower, 29%. But let's think about it this way. When an A-rated school district like Sarasota has nearly 1/3 of its 3rd graders falling behind in reading, that means about 1,000 children in this county are falling behind. In Manatee, that number is 1,900. So as they said in Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem. Fortunately, the problem is being recognized in both of our counties. And to help us figure out what to do, we have with us, as you heard, Ralph Smith and Barbara Shirley. I'll proceed with the introductions. So Ralph Smith is Senior Vice President of the Annie E. Casey Foundation and Managing Director of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. He is a self-described recovering law professor.
That's correct.
University of Pennsylvania, and if you hear what he was teaching, securities law and corporate law, you know why he's trying to recover. He was also once the chief operating officer of the Philadelphia School District. I'm sure that was an easy gig. He served on too many boards and received too many honors to mention, except for one. That's the Fred Rogers Leadership and Philanthropy Award. And that's the Mr. Rogers, correct?
That is Mr. Rogers.
So just one quick question. Do they give you like a zip-up cardigan instead of a plaque?
Actually, they do.
Oh, really?
Actually, they do.
Wow. Drum roll, please. That was not planned. So anyway, let's welcome officially Mr. Ralph Smith.
Thank you.
As you can tell, we really don't rehearse these things beforehand. Who knew? So Barbara Shirley, Dr. Barbara Shirley, has been principal of Alta Vista Elementary School in Sarasota since 2007. Hang on for the list of degrees. She's got a bachelor's degree in special education and elementary ed, a master's degree in learning disabilities, and a doctorate in educational leadership. At Alta Vista, 94% of the students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Yet, it has earned an A grade from the state of Florida 11 years in a row. Okay. So for those of you who don't know her, you'll soon figure out why, as Pat said, she's the 2014 Principal of the Year in our great state. Please welcome Barbara Shirley.
Thank you.
So, we'll start with Ralph, our esteemed guest, for a few minutes. Before I ask you, Ralph, to talk about the campaign for grade level reading, why don't you just tell us why you are drawn to this cause?
And before I answer that question, let me say thank you to you. This is an example of civic journalism that we admire, and I am personally grateful for the way you have approached this issue, not only personally, but also in the paper, so thank you.
Thank you.
I have an abiding concern about intergenerational poverty in this country. I think intergenerational poverty is the economic, political, and moral challenge of our time. And in many ways, it is an existential threat to our nation as a land of opportunity and a nation that guarantees every child an ability, an opportunity to succeed. And unless all of us find ways, great and small, to raise our voices and take action on intergenerational poverty, we are heading in the wrong direction at breakneck speed. And for me, this opportunity to work on the campaign for grade level reading was a chance, for me important, but a very small step toward disrupting intergenerational poverty in this nation.
Thanks. Did you have an epiphany? Did you have an epiphanal moment that you said, this is what I'm going to do, or did you come to it slowly?
I had an opportunity 25 years ago to work in and with the school district of Philadelphia. And there were three statistics that continued to haunt me for the last quarter century. One, the school district failed 25% of the children in first grade. Two, despite that, 50% of the kids in third grade were not reading on grade level. And three, of those kids who were retained in grade at least once and were 16 years or older when they got to 8th grade, before they complete 8th grade, 95% of them dropped out of high school. You know, those three data points haunted me for 25 years. And I had an opportunity, a once in a career opportunity, when somebody says, what would it take for you to do this? And I said, 5 years of support for the campaign for grade level reading. And my board chair looked at me and he says, you don't know what that is, and neither do I, but we're willing to go ahead with it. And it was an enormously important moment for me, and it tilted my career once again.
Yeah, well, terrific. So, what does the campaign do? And tell us a little bit about your role as managing director, please.
Well, as every executive in this room knows, my role as managing director is to try to recruit a whole lot of very smart, very strong people who will make me look really good. So let me be really clear.
You've done that.
Thank you. Mission accomplished, right? The campaign for grade level reading really seeks to raise awareness, build public support, and create political will to change what is a slow-moving disaster that's morphing into a catastrophe. And that is that 67% number that you quoted at the outset balloons to 80% when we talk about low-income children. 4 out of 5 low-income children in this country are not reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. And what that means is that those children are on a glide path to poverty, and a glide path to level of poverty that will affect them, their families, and their children. And for us, this is not inevitable. It is a problem that can be solved, and the campaign is essentially an opportunity to mobilize communities across the country to create a different set of conditions, to work in partnership with schools to ensure that we do what's necessary so that kids, when they get to 3rd grade, can look forward to a brighter future and a more promising life for themselves and for their families.
Okay, so the research that I've read and what I've read that you've written and people from the community have contributed, there are at least 3 areas that you try to concentrate on: school readiness, absenteeism, and summer reading loss. Can you talk a little bit about each of those briefly, and we'll return to these when we have a full dialogue with the 3 of us. But
sure, I'm looking forward to the principal, really, the real expert here, talking about that. I'm looking forward to that. We have focused on what we call the community solutions to 3 problems which contribute significantly to children not reading on grade level by 3rd grade. Moreover, when combined, these 3 challenges put a large and growing number of students outside the reach of schools. There are 3 groups of students who are in serious trouble. 1, those are the students who start out so far behind before they even get to school that it's difficult for them to catch up, and difficult for schools to help them to catch up. 2, these are children who miss so many days of school and so much instruction that it won't matter if we have a qualified teacher in every classroom with a first-rate curriculum that's rigorous and engaging, because that child is not there to benefit from it. And 3, these are the kids who return to school in September, farther behind than when they left in June, because they've lost significant ground, sometimes 2 or more months of learning over the summer. So summer learning loss, chronic absence, and the readiness and preparation gap are 3 problems that really have been at the heart of the campaign for grade level reading over the last 4 years.
And some of the material I read indicated that not only do children from households of poverty maybe lose 2 months, but children in higher income homes taking field trips, traveling, going to the library may actually gain a month.
That is exactly correct. And what happens is that widens the gap. Now let me be real clear. If the gap widens because some kids are really gaining, that's good news for those kids. And we don't want to take anything away from those kids. But what we've got to make sure is that we find meaningful ways to engage the rest of the children we care most about are thoroughly engaged over the summer. And so, as parents and grandparents, aunts, uncles, we make sure that summer for those kids is a time of opportunity and not of risk. For low-income kids who are completely dependent on the social services and institutions and schools when schools are open, summer could be a time of significant risk, and for far too many kids, that risk is real and results in significant summer learning loss.
Okay. And they're also often hungry because they don't have their free or reduced lunch. If you haven't heard, the food bank in Sarasota has been aggressive. Just had a summer campaign to prevent summer hunger. Raised almost more than $1 million, 700,000 pounds of food last spring. So I think the communities are trying to work on that, and maybe we'll be talking about do we have some social services along with the food trucks and those kinds of things. So I think that's something that we all might be thinking about as we move forward as a way to help engage children, keep them healthy in the summer, and et cetera. And then we'll get to one great success story in just a minute. Just real quickly, Ralph, could you just kind of give us your quick observations on what you've seen in your whirlwind tour here in Manatee and Sarasota?
Now, I was introduced as a lawyer and a recovering law professor. So just real quickly, what does that mean? This has been a remarkable 3 days from the moment we landed on Wednesday afternoon right through now. What I've seen has really been gratifying, it's been affirming, it's been exhilarating, and here's why. And this is not just the demands of courtesy, because people who know me know that I much prefer candor to courtesy. Here's what I see. We've got 3 strategies for the campaign. We see you've got to build a big tent and include in that tent a broad range of actors from across sectors, agencies, and some unusual and unlikely allies. You've got to find proof points. You've got to have some place where people could go and see and kick the tires and say, this can work. And then you've got to get the discretionary dollars and talent, leadership and voice of philanthropy into the game. And here in these communities that I've had an opportunity to visit, all 3 things are happening. On my left is an example of the proof point. In this room, we see the big tent. And sitting over there and elsewhere, we see the Patterson Foundation, the Manatee Community Foundation, the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. We have the United Way. We have got in this room and in this game the people, the agencies, the organizations, and the institutions who are really going to make a difference. And the fact that they have put a stake in the ground around third grade reading is, for me, enormously exciting. And I'm almost sorry that I have to leave.
We'll have you back.
Next winter. Be glad to.
And you mentioned having all the actors together. That was a nice little segue to our back scene here. So you had mentioned Dr. Shirley, and I'll segue to her real quickly here. Dr. Shirley, give us a little picture of Alta Vista Elementary, its student population, and the community it serves, please.
Great, thank you. And I also want to thank you for providing this forum for us to be able to discuss a topic that's so near and dear to all of our hearts, and one that is so critical because we have so many children that have so many needs. And I think we are living in a community where people are very heartfelt about wanting to help, and this has given us an opportunity to share what the needs are so that we can come together and support the schools and the children even more so. So Alta Vista. I've been at Alta Vista for 8 years. I'm a proud principal. We have 640 children, and 94% of those 640 children are on free and reduced lunch. Prior to in the past 8 years, the school has grown from 78% free and reduced lunch to 94%. So we have seen quite a change and a shift in being able to meet the needs of our families and our children. We have about 71% of our children come from minority families, and about 30% of our children come from families that do not speak English. And we are the highest homeless, school that has the highest homeless rate of children at Alta Vista. So we have quite a challenge, but we have 640 of the most beautiful children, and when I need to just be refreshed, all I have to do is go out, walk into classrooms, see their beautiful faces, and say, this is why I'm here. So.
Well, great. So you've been there 8 years.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about how you and your school approached reading when you got there, and maybe how that has evolved and what has changed, and maybe what triggered that change.
Okay. Well, of course, having a very high at-risk population, our students were really struggling with learning to read. Our FCAT scores were on a roller coaster. One year they'd go up, another year they'd go down. And I think this is something that many of the Title I schools in particular were experiencing it. So as we started to examine our student population and working with our families, we really realized that our students entering into the school were lacking in the readiness skills that they needed to be successful. So at that point, we were really behind the 8 ball when children came into the school. Their vocabulary skills were inadequate. They didn't have the language skills. Oftentimes students held a book upside down. They didn't know how to hold the book correctly. They didn't recognize that the words on the pages related to the pictures, and they came together and told a story. So it took us the first 5-6 months of every year with our kindergarten students entering into school to really prepare them for the learning environment. And this was basic also, following directions, sitting on a rug and having discussions, talking about what's going on in their lives, or how to solve problems, or just everyday things that many of our children were really prepared for when they entered into school.
Sure. So you saw those things, and let's just kind of jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
And let's talk about what you're doing now. A little bit about Alta Vista Eagle Academy, and Ralph gave us a little entry into two-generation approach. So tell us what you're doing now. Okay.
So we're very fortunate. We have some very caring donors. We have the Community Foundation of Sarasota, who are supporting our efforts. And we have formed some really strong partnerships with a number of agencies and community organizations to provide an incredible summer experience for our children. Because our children come from most of them homes of poverty, and they have not had some of the experiences that have enriched their lives that many of our children have had, we wanted to provide a summer program for them. And our goal was to help them be better prepared for entering into school, to decrease that summer learning loss, and to provide arts integration experiences and cultural experiences that will help level that playing field for them. So we just had our 3rd year. Our first year we had 62 incoming kindergarten children, and that was our goal. That was our target goal, is entering kindergarten children our first year. And 62 children experienced for 5 weeks an intensive program in reading and in math for the summer. 4 days a week they came to school, and we really were very strategic in the way that we approached reading in order to give them the skills that they needed to be successful when they started their kindergarten school year. We had amazing results. We did pre and post testing. Mm-hmm. We're all in the school district we call them data dorks. We prefer data divas, but we have data dorks. And of course we are constantly analyzing data in order to show the success. We believe that there needs to be a high accountability and responsibility on our part. So our first year we had 62 children, and we created a parent university where parents could come and also learn strategies on how to help their children at home, behavior management, parenting skills. And from there, we have grown. This last summer we had 250 children in our program for 7 weeks, which was quite an experience for us, because not only our entering kindergarten, first and second grade students were a part of that program, but we were able to expand in the afternoon. And as we sit here at Florida Studio Theater, the Florida Studio Theater teaching artists provided a 2-hour enrichment program for them in the afternoon in collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club. And we were able to give them some experiences that they would not have otherwise. They went on a lot of different field trips on Fridays to different cultural activities in the community, because we were able to write grants that were funded through very generous donors in the foundation. And our children had an amazing experience. It was very magical. And not only that, but our parents had a very positive experience. Our parent university has grown to offering 15 different courses for parents to choose from. Like they go to a conference, they could select which class they wanted to take. The classes were focused on finance, on nutrition and wellness, on parenting skills, on strategies, on English as a second language. Our Hispanic families were able to learn English. Technology course, because many of our families have not had experience with technology. Our goal was to give them the skills so that when they could enhance their skills in order to be able to be aware of what their children were doing in school, but also to perhaps get better jobs. I have created a certified nursing assistant program on campus. So while the children were going to school this summer for 7 weeks, their moms were at school. They would drop them off in the morning and to go to school at the Eagle Academy, and then they would attend a nursing program right on our campus. They were familiar with the campus. They didn't have to navigate any type of barriers out in the community, and they were really comfortable going to school right while their children were. So we've graduated, I'm going to say 34, 35 certified nursing assistants as parents, and an effort to help give them skills so that they can provide for their families and work towards getting out of poverty.
Sure, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that having the children on campus at the same time that the parents were able to get that training made all the difference. If the training would have been at one location and the child care would have been at another location or nowhere,
right,
it would have been much more difficult for the parents to undertake that training.
Absolutely, and we actually have a social worker that has been provided through the Community Foundation, where this social worker has tied herself to our moms and our families. And this has created a powerful liaison between the school and the home, because she is able to coach them, give them guidance to navigate through some of these obstacles that they would incur in transitioning from an individual who really struggled with school themselves, perhaps dropped out of school when they were 16, had not picked up a book, and they had to really go back to to learn how to study, how to read, and how to manage a family with children, and then also learn to study and prepare for tests. And whenever they would have tests, we knew it, because they'd walk into the school and be very anxious, and when they were successful, we'd hear the screams on the other end of the campus. So it was a wonderful, it was great to see them being able to self-actualize and be able to achieve some of the goals that they have wanted to achieve all their life, but really didn't have some of the avenues to do so.
Sure, and I understand from John Annis at the Community Foundation the hardcore Marine Sergeant Major. I have not gone to one of the graduations yet, but all he tells me is bring your tissues.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think if it makes him get a little teary-eyed, I wouldn't make it.
I think I've seen him with a little bit of a tissue over there.
Yeah. All right, thank you for that. So, what do you think? Good idea? Is this a good thing?
Very good thing. A very good thing.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, you know, we've had some conversations, you know, kind of around coffee tables and stuff about, okay, we liked it. You say this is a good thing. Dr. Shirley has evidence that this is a good thing. People in the community think this is a good thing. How do we start to talk about moving a program like this out? Well, first, would that be something that you would recommend?
I would.
Okay. So
That's good.
I would.
I really like him.
now we'll concede there are other models across the country that are good. But let's just say something like this. What kind of advice would you give a community like ours if we wanted to start to move this out? What kinds of things do you think need to be in place? What kinds of things do you do and not do?
Well, what I really appreciate about Dr. Shirley and the best principals and superintendents is their willingness to step up and say, here's a problem, and this is what we can do to solve it. That's wonderful, and it's inspirational and the like. But what about the rest of us? And what my concern is that the more the school does, the less we feel we have to do. And, you know, getting kids to school, ready for school, shouldn't be her responsibility. It should be ours. Having kids to show up shouldn't be her responsibility. It should be ours. And the same thing about summer. I love this CNA program, and I love that it's located at school. The question is, who ought to run that? Who ought to pay for it? Who ought to staff it? And in many respects, our best principals, our best educators, our best superintendents are being overwhelmed by the size of the demand and the depth of our silence and the absence of support. So while I applaud this, and while I think it ought to be replicated and we ought to scale it, we ought to say, who's raising their hands? Beside Dr. Shirley, beside the Community Foundation putting some dollars in, who else is raising their hand to make sure that this happens? It happens consistently, it happens consistently well, and it happens consistently well at scale. That's a community challenge, and I wonder about that in this community and in communities across the country.
So that's not a rhetorical question, was it?
No, it is not.
Okay. So in the communities that you've seen that have been very successful, that have scaled this larger, moved it out, what kinds of people, what kinds of organizations raise their hands and then put that stake in the ground, like you mentioned?
Now, let me be real clear. This is not an issue around which anyone has been very successful. A recent conversation with Paul Revels, who is a recent commissioner in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Paul says, you know, we have done everything that we were supposed to do. We have instituted the most powerful education reforms in the nation. And Massachusetts is now the strongest state in the nation in terms of education. They are #1. And they can compete against Finland or Poland or Shanghai or wherever if you look at the top half of their class, the top half of the students. Even Massachusetts, the best state in the nation, has not figured out this set of challenges, In fact, Massachusetts has the widest achievement gap in the nation. So it's not as if you're behind. You're where just about everybody else is. This is a nationwide problem that we've got to resolve to solve. And what we've got to do is to find new levers to do it. I love this two-generation approach, because what the two-generation approach does, it's an affirmative way of saying that we refuse to accept the notion that we can save the children while we jettison their parents. And in many respects, when we think about it, a lot of what we do is about kids and not about families, and certainly not about parents. So the two-generation approach says we have got to make an about face of that, and that is an important beginning. It's an important beginning in this school. And the fact that one school can do it and can do it well tells the rest of us, just like it's not the kid, it's not the school. If it's not the kid and it's not the school, can we say it's not us? And I suspect it's not the kid, it's not the school, it's us. And that's really the challenge in this community and the challenge in communities all across the country.
So, when we talk about families, and we had this discussion on the phone a couple weeks ago, some people will say, I hear you, Ralph Smith, I hear you, but we have to have some sort of expectation, or what are the expectations that we as a society, as a community, can have for parents in terms of their role? How do you speak to that question in terms of people who want to help but say, geez, we have to have some positive reaction from parents?
Well, I appreciate the people who say it. I appreciate less the people who think it and don't say it. It is a challenge from which we cannot escape. And let me answer the question by giving an example. There's some programs across the nation where when we take kids to college, for the college visit, we take the parent. Because we have a large number of parents who are taking our word for it, because they've never been there, never seen it, never experienced it. If we say that part of what we want to do is to help parents take up their role and their responsibilities and really help them to succeed in discharging the role, we've got to do at least three things. One, we've got to help parents imagine, develop, visualize, and own their view of success. Not ours, not yours, not mine, their view of success. And like most of us, those parents don't know what they don't know. So we've got to create the opportunities where they begin to have some choices about what the vision of success is. And they've got to get to the point where they own it. Secondly, we have got to see our role as supporting those parents in operationalizing and executing and in achieving and attaining their vision of success for their children. And the third thing, and this is why the Sergeant Major tears up, we've got to provide opportunities where parents can mark and celebrate progress. The fact that you have adults who, for the first time in their lives, have an opportunity to be treated with regard, have an opportunity to be celebrated, the fact that they get dressed up and they bring their families, the fact that this is such a big thing for them, is really an indictment of the rest of us. We haven't figured out how to help these parents mark and celebrate the success. And I said three, but this is the fourth. And this is really the most important. We have got to believe, and we have got to act as if we believe these parents love their children the way we love ours, and they love their children more than we do. And the fact of the matter is, poverty is corrosive. It is corrosive in terms of experience, it's corrosive in terms of perception, and it's corrosive in terms of values. And in very curious and perverse ways, those of us who help children really tend to believe that those families don't care as much about their children as we do of ours. And that is what is not said. And that is the conversation we need to have. And then we all need to figure out what we need to do to engage respectfully with those families and to provide them the exposure, the opportunities, the information, the tools, and support. So then we can say, we have high expectations for you as well. That's what we need to do, and I'm hoping that in this community, you're really going to show the rest of us how to do it. And with the leadership sitting on my left, I have no doubt that you will.
Good. So, yeah, go ahead. So, Dr. Shirley, you and I talked a little bit about this very fact, and you're on the ground. So you're there. No offense to our friend, our visiting friend, but as we had talked.
No offense taken.
Yeah. Often an expert comes to town, talks about the problem, talks about solutions elsewhere, and then goes off and leaves Dr. Shirley and the educators in this room to do the work. So, Dr. Shirley, tell us a little bit about your experience with some of the things that Ralph mentioned in terms of how do you engage parents? What have you found to be most successful in terms of how to have that conversation and what parents really need the most?
Well, it's really interesting. We had a conversation about that this afternoon, and one of the things that we have found, and it's about relationships, and it's about trust. It's about family, communicating with families, and again, celebrating them for what their achievements and what skills and talents that they have. When we think about the types of challenges that we have in building schools and building the relationships with families, I think that one of the most critical things that we can do is to get them involved in the school and get them to understand that we have partnership. We're in a partnership, and that it takes a real team effort in order to achieve the hefty goals that we have to achieve as a school. But it's a partnership, and our families knowing that no matter what, we are going to be there for their children, and we are going to be there with them and helping their children to be successful. But we talked about this afternoon about recognizing parents as experts of their children, and for us to be able to capitalize on the information and get to know those families and the children at better levels, I think is really critical for us to really be able to move forward, because there are things that are going on in homes with children, and some of the challenges and the struggles that our families are going through, that if we had a better understanding and knowledge of what was going on, I think that we could do a better job in the schools also.
Okay. So, I've been to a few schools over the years, and sometimes some schools aren't particularly friendly places to visit. You walk up to the front, driver's license, registration, please. So you go through that. You have to have an appointment with somebody. Maybe hard to get to the principal or maybe even to the teacher, and we understand everybody's busy. Y'all are very busy. You're overwhelmed. Many of your colleagues are just demoralized because they've been, all the rules have come down, and new tests and measurements and blah, 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 blah.
I'm getting depressed. I'm serious.
Well, that's why I'm a journalist, because that's the kind of stuff we do. Lawyers talk. We cast dark light on sunshine.
Do we have a therapist in the audience?
I'm serious.
But it has been said. So how do you make, literally, how do you make a school friendly where parents feel like they can come and tell you that they have a problem or tell you that they need something? How do you do that, literally?
Literally, something that we've tried to adopt at Alta Vista is to really have an open door policy. And that if anytime anybody walks into my school and wants to see me, I make it my business to see them. And as a result of that, we have our Eagle Academy in place, because we had a volunteer come in and say, that she wanted to meet with me, wanted to talk about some ideas that she had, and thus started the relationship with Mary Kay and Joe Henson. And we had many conversations, talked about a dream and a vision we had, and it was put in place. And they were one of our first donors and have been so gracious in helping to support us since then. But I think the idea of having that open door policy, and really I think also training your staff, that if parents have concerns, and giving them the training on how to understand what's going on in a child's life and in the life of our families, I think that giving them that opportunity to expand their knowledge and their skill sets in order to learn how to deal with these types of situations. We've done a lot of book studies on poverty, on parenting, on how to communicate with families and parents, and I think that a lot of training has taken place in order to help that. But having a smile on your face and welcoming people into your school.
Good. I'm coming to Alta Vista next week.
That's good. We'll give you a little office space.
Oh, that'd be nice. So let's talk. We were talking about philanthropy, and you've got the Mr. Rogers Award.
What can I say?
What can philanthropy do, and what can it really not do? So we'll start with you.
But let me go back.
Okay.
I won't take umbrage to your calling me an expert, and I will accept that I'm going to leave town, but as I indicated, I'm willing to come back, and November, December, January, February, I'm willing to come back. But I really want to emphasize that this is not a problem being left to the educators, and that's the important point to me. We're not going to leave this problem to the educators. This is all our problem, and we've got to figure out solutions on that. And philanthropy really is part of the solution. Philanthropy can find and invest in good people. Philanthropy can invest in good ideas. Philanthropy can invest in good programs, but the people, the ideas, and the program add up to creating proof points. Philanthropy is not likely to sustain a good idea, the good people, and the good programs. What philanthropy can do is lift up, say, let's do the research and development work, let's do the prototype building, let's prove that this could work, and now what do we do? And that's where the issue of public policy becomes really important. And too often, philanthropy gets stuck with the tab, and there's nobody coming up to say, this is working. And so foundations sometimes feel reluctant to take on new ideas because they think that if it does work, they're going to be put in the comfortable position of having to walk away at some time, because it's important that philanthropic dollars be seen as a renewable and replenishable resource, that you need to go on and find the next big risk, the big idea, and you need to lift that one up. And often we don't have the public policy behind the philanthropic dollars. What we don't do well in philanthropy is make sometimes the tough decision to invest in what works and disinvest in what does not. And for those of us sitting in this room, many of whom of us have been the beneficiaries of philanthropic dollars, and for those of us who have had to make those decisions, those are the toughest decisions to make, because there's always somebody, there's always a relationship, there's always some value, even in the program that doesn't work. So these are never easy, but philanthropy's role in terms of producing the proof points that will allow decisions to be made to scale requires philanthropy at times to make that tough decision that there are things we won't fund in order for us to fund what works. And those of us who have had to make those decisions don't make them lightly, and there are times when we make them at great personal regret.
Yeah, I've talked to some of my foundation friends, and they maybe were having a bad day. I said, how can you be having a bad day? All you do is give away other people's money.
you know, there's nobody in philanthropy he laughed at that.
But when you hear it explained as you did, or I've heard other people explain it, it can be a very difficult process. It's you know, that you have to, people you've invested in, literally, and their programs, and you have to tell them no, and it's not easy. So you mentioned public policy, and actually, I'll just give an alert. We will do questions in just a couple of minutes here. We'll take questions on both, at the bottom of both aisles, so if you want to maybe move down a little bit, you can start to do that. You mentioned public policy. So after what I've heard, and we've heard you think that Alta Vista Academy is a good idea, and we've heard that it works. So what if I said to you, you know what, I'm going to write an editorial next week and say that the public policy of this county and Manatee County and the entire state of Florida should be that all Title I, all low-income schools have summer programs that are as thorough as the one at Alta Vista. Good idea? Good public policy?
I'm not convinced it is.
Really?
No. What I think we need public policy to do is to say, here's a problem that needs to be solved. And we're going to commit resources to solve the problem. And now you, within your neighborhood, within your community, figure out what's the best way. And too often, we fall in love with a particular program. What works at Alta Vista may not work at every place, at every community, in every neighborhood, and every school. And we ought to be reluctant and cautious about enshrining programs into public policy. Taxpayer and the public dollars ought to be used to achieve outcomes. We should set the market outcomes and then hold folks who get those dollars accountable for developing, devising, designing, and implementing programs that work to achieve those outcomes. If they don't achieve the outcomes, we should get rid of them. I like this program a lot, but I don't know if it will work every place and for every occasion and in every community, so I wouldn't want that enshrined in public policy.
Okay. So Pat, there goes that editorial. Okay, and one last question. We have some of our friends from Manatee County made the trek down here. It's my native land. It's where I grew up. It's where I went to school. It's where my grandsons go to school. So what advice would you give? You know, the United Way has stepped up and is organizing and really trying to lead a community effort to at least recognize the problem and start to work on solutions. So what quick advice for those folks who drove down here on busy 301 and 41, what would you say? You know what, if I were in your shoes, I would have a compact, written, announced global compact between the superintendents of schools and the school boards and the rest of the community. And I would ask the superintendent to come and report every year and to present a report card on the community and to applaud or criticize the community for how many kids came to school ready for school. To applaud or criticize the community for how many kids showed up every day. And to applaud or criticize the community for how many kids got back in September without losing ground. I think, you know, rethinking the compact between the community and the schools is the single most important thing we can do. And there is no community across this country where there's an honest conversation
between superintendents, school boards, and the community at large. We force superintendents and principals in schools to take on more than they can handle, to overpromise, to overclaim. We leave them out on the island, and then we say, look at it, you failed. And if we can just change that, we would have made a dramatic difference in what we're able to accomplish for all kids and for low-income kids in general.
So I saw Phil Brown. Phil, you got that? You got that written down? Yeah. Oh, there you are. Okay, right. There you go. Karen. Do we have questions? We can take questions from the floor if anybody would like to. If not, you're going to get more of me.
Well, that's a
Yeah. That's all right. Actually, let me give some of you in the audience who have been to these forums have heard my little caveat. I'm going to church Sunday morning. I'm going to get my sermon. So if you could just kind of get to the question part, that'll let us have more questions. So, yes, sir.
Getting right to the question.
Thank you.
With the new technology developments now, there are a fair number of online resources. Some of them are for profit and some of them are free. I think of the Khan Academy as one of them. Is there a role anywhere for those in what you are proposing that we do, or is that too global, too big a step?
Great question. Thank you.
Well, actually, Khan Academy is being used in the schools as we speak. There are a lot of different programs that are national programs that our teachers in our districts are using on a daily basis to enhance instruction and enhance learning. So many classrooms are going digital, where the students have computers in their hands from the minute they walk in to the minute they leave at the end of the day, where it's very seamlessly into instruction, seamless into learning. And we're experiencing that at Alta Vista. We're seeing the students really embracing online type programs in order to enhance the learning process. We're getting into flipped classrooms where they're actually going through instruction prior to entering into a classroom. So there are a number of devices and programs that are being used in order to enhance that learning.
Yeah. We have at our disposal today technology that we could not have imagined a decade ago. We have got to do a better job of committing to a combination of high tech and high touch. We cannot become solely dependent on technology, but we have to use technology more effectively. We can reach every student in both counties this coming summer with an online summer program. And there are lots of them. Will any of them work for everybody? No. But there are probably enough of them that some of them, or one of them, will work for somebody. We could reach every student with an online tutorial program. Will that work for everybody? No. We could use technology to send every parent a text reminding him or her about what might be a good thing to do with their kid. We can make reams of materials available to kids so that learning happens wherever they are and not during the school day. And as the Khan Academy demonstrates, we can find people who can communicate. The secret of the Khan Academy, from my point of view, is those tapes were made for, was it his niece?
His niece, yeah, in India.
And the humanity comes out. And what captivates us, subconsciously and unconsciously, is here's somebody who is speaking to somebody he cares about.
Dr. Shirley, if I could ask real quickly, did you mean at your school or across all the schools, Sarasota and Manatee County, that it's being used?
With Khan Academy?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that varying schools are using it. I don't think it's a uniform. It's not being used uniformly.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much, by the way. This is
Yeah.
spectacular.
Great question. And so I'll display that I'm the actual education expert here. So
That's right.
actually, you know who uses flipped learning? Urban Meyer. and his Ohio State University football team. Yeah. So, okay. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Two-part question. You started off by saying 1/3 of the third graders aren't up to par. Demographically, what percent are African American, Caucasian, and Hispanic? That's one question. The next one is, how many of these third graders went through Head Start?
I'm not the expert on this one.
There you go.
I tell you, it's a good question. We know the correlation between poverty and those results, except at certain schools. Does anybody have a guess?
Whenever I get a question like that, I ask for the questioner to say 2 more sentences. You know, what is it that you're thinking about that will help me answer the question?
I have watched over my 78 years this problem grow more and more. I busted my butt raising 2 sons and saw them through college. So my wife, I give her the credit, reading started at 3 years of age. How do we turn around the fact that what we really need is 75% of these parents to be educated, and the 25% the children will learn? But the parents, it's the old Latin saying, nemo dat quotidiana. You cannot give what you do not have. And these parents lack the skills. And that it's just so frustrating, because the children go home and they're exposed to the poverty of knowledge.
Please, let me just ask you if you could tell me, let's look ahead 20 years. And when today's third graders are parents themselves, what do you predict?
I can't hear your question.
When today's third graders
Yes.
are parents themselves 20 years from now, what do you predict?
I just feel that about 75% of those parents are not capable of educating the child.
But how about the ones we have in third grade today when they are parents?
Yeah.
And they have their kids? What do you predict?
I would have a lengthy discussion with you.
Well, I don't think it's going to be that lively or that long, because your reasoning would tell us that 25 years from now or 30 years from now, somebody is going to say 75% of those parents aren't doing the job that they should do. And the reason why they're not going to be able to do the job they should do is because we're not doing our job today, and the people 20 and 30 years ago didn't do their jobs. And that's the conversation we need to have, that this problem won't go away by beating up on parents. It will go away by changing the trajectory of the next generation. And that is a conversation I would be willing to have.
Good. Thank you. Let's see. Anyone else? Got a couple over here.
I feel very strongly, how do you detect a child does not understand what is going on and cannot keep up with reading? I have had experience because a child, I was taken out of the class, I looked after her, and she read beautifully after a year. And when I later met her parents and grandparents, they said she could not take her head out of a book. Now, I strongly believe that a lot of children are not detected because they can't understand what's going on, and they just sit in the classroom and they're lost. And it's a very simple question. I still don't understand it.
Okay, well, I haven't heard the question, so we'll move on here. Anybody else? Yeah, right there.
I have a bunch of questions, but let me ask this. What's the viability now of your program, Dr. Shirley? Is it totally dependent on private funds to keep it going? Is there any support from the Board of Education? And what are the things that you'd like to be doing in
That's a great question. A great question. At this point, our program is solely dependent on private funding. There is a tremendous amount of support and movement to gather the support of the school district and our state legislators in order to lobby for funds to provide programs for during the summer. And this is really where we need to go. It goes back to what is being talked about with the community and the schools working more strongly together in order to provide the support that the schools need in order to help children be successful through programs of this nature. Now, it may not look the same as we were talking about earlier. The program may not look the same at all schools, and I think that that's where schools have to really evaluate what best meets the need of individual schools. Our goal from the very get-go was not to have just this program for Alta Vista. We really wanted to be able to provide a program for all children. But we needed to create a prototype that was successful, and that we have done. We have the data to show the success that the children have gained. The achievement scores are strongly indicative that a program of this nature is successful, not only for the children, but for the parents with the two-generational approach. And our goal at this point is to gather the support and the strength of our community, not only just local community, but statewide and national, and support through campaign for grade level reading in order to provide opportunities for other schools to have the similar type experience with their students. So at this point, I think that's the direction we're looking at going in.
Dr. Shirley, would you talk about your PALS volunteers?
My pals, oh, I have a fan in the group. Our PALS volunteers, this is every school in the district has a program called...
District support.
I'm sorry?
It's district support.
The district support from PALS. So every school in the district has support from volunteers in their schools. And this is dependent on not only parents, but it's depending on communities and organizations. We have businesses that release their employees during the day to come to schools and provide support. We have mentors and high school students that come back and provide programs and tutoring and mentoring for young students. But particularly at Alta Vista, we have an Eagle's Nest where we have close to 200 community members that come in and provide weekly tutorial services for our lowest 25% of our students in order to focus on reading and math skills alone. And this has been a tremendous success because it's very focused, it's very directed, very strategic. The teachers are very actively involved in it, and we were able to really capitalize on a lot of skills, a lot of caring people that come in and want to be able to provide services for children.
Yeah. And I will mention one thing, as Ralph mentioned. I mean, I think as I started about this program, about grade level reading, one of the first realizations that people had was third grade's way too late, kindergarten's way too late. So we keep backing up the clock. And in some of the material that the campaign provides, it talks about what happens to children whose mothers don't have prenatal care, how far they get behind. If they're not well fed and regular doctor visits, that's another strike. And we live in a state that has been sued for its abysmal Medicaid reimbursement rates, where it's incredibly difficult for poor and working parents who aren't making enough to afford insurance to even get their children to a doctor. So I would argue that that's one of the things, is that when you talk about what the community can do, what an entire state can do, that there are some of those things on health care and prenatal care that we can do, that can be done with money.
And since you live in Florida, you can say that.
And we do, and we will again. Yes.
Mr. Smith, would you reflect on the role of the campaign when it comes to families where English is not the primary language spoken at home?
I think that the evidence is pretty clear that the countries that are doing the best in education, the countries against which we compare most unfavorably, bilingual and multilingual societies. Everything we know about brain research tells us, everything we know tells us that being bilingual is an advantage and not a disadvantage. And yet we persist, despite the competitive disadvantage, and despite the evidence from brain research, we persist in an English-first, English-only ideology. That ideology has nothing to do with education and everything to do with politics.
All right, I think we can take maybe one more.
I'm worried about Tom. I don't know what you're going to say in this op-ed piece, so I'm going to ask the question. Based on your experience, what would be the 3 things that that are barriers to schools and communities coming together with this compact the way you've described it? And then for Dr. Shirley, what would be the 3 things that you've learned in your experience that have helped bridge that gap between schools acting as islands versus schools using the resources, much like you've just described with PALS, pulling those resources into schools to actually enhance and enrich the education experiences of our kids and their parents and the community? And then maybe Tom will have something to write on Sunday.
Perfect. I'd say 3. The first thing is the business communities need to be engaged in this, put money and resources into it, because the kids who are not doing well are much more likely to stay in our communities. They're going to be your workforce, they're going to be your everyday workforce, and if they are not trained well, if they are not raised well, if they are not supported by the entire community, our economies are not going to survive. Or we're going to have, it's trite, but we're going to have Tale of Two Cities. That's what it'll be. The second thing is, I think there needs to be political action. The fact, and I've already given my sermon, the fact that our state reimburses Medicaid and other health care services at rates so far below the national average is an embarrassment. The third thing is, I think we all need to reflect on what we've heard today and get into this, escape this mindset that we can just say, hey parent, bring this child to school ready to go. No matter what, let's just do it. And I think we all need to say that it's our common responsibility. This is something in the common good, something that benefits not only the children in these households, their parents, but all of us.
Okay. Great job. So I'm going to address your question about working in the community and gaining the support. I think that the thing that I have learned over the past few years is how incredibly gracious and caring and education-focused our community is. I know that. I raised children in this community. I've been a part of this community for 23, 24 years. However, to personally experience it as a principal within the school system and see the results of the work that our community is doing in my school, but in my colleagues' schools, and the volunteer efforts that volunteers that are coming into the school every week, giving of their time, 2 to 3 to 5, 10 hours a week, and gaining as much from their experience as much as they are giving is, to me, is so heartfelt, because our students are going to be the winners of it. Our schools are going to be the winners, and our teachers. To see our volunteers and in tears talking about the experiences that they've had with their children, and how powerful it is to them to know that they are making a difference in their a certain child's life is making a difference in our school. And I know that we can't do it by ourselves. And it goes back to what Ralph has been saying, is the responsibility of our community and responsibility of us working together in order to provide the hope and the dreams of these children so that they can come true. And I see that happening in Sarasota. And I see the support that we're getting, and the dedication and the passion that our community foundations have, the businesses, our snowbirds that come in, and the minute they come across the Florida border, they want to get into the schools. The way that our mentor programs are happening in the school system, with our high school students coming back and doing service learning projects and community service into the elementary schools. The partnerships that are formed in order to ensure that we're able to provide programs like we have at Alta Vista, and that other schools have at and the middle schools, the programs that they're getting in the high schools. We're a very fortunate community, and I think the thing that I've learned is that is to set your sail, think outside that box, and know that we can make that difference, but we can only do it with the support of us working together as a team.
Okay, so a programming note, at 8 o'clock, literally hairspray will go on this very stage.
Can we be in it?
So I've been working my... so the kind folks at Florida Studio, the theater was supposed to be dark tonight, and they had an extended run, and they were kind enough to say we could go ahead with this event. But there's outside this exit door, there was a little room, and if anybody wants to stick around, I think Dr. Shirley and Mr. Smith have agreed to stick around for a couple more questions and answers. So I'm going to stop it, the question and answers here. We're going to let you give us just one rousing piece, and then I have a couple thank yous in closing. So rouse us, get us ready to march out into the world and put our stakes in the ground.
I love it. I'm not sure this is going to be rousing, but I thought the last question. I think a major barrier for this, and I'm looking at my United Way friends and saying, you've got to host this meeting. The major barrier will be the reluctance of educators to trust. To trust that if they come clean with the data, if they say, here's what attendance really looks like, we're not saying it's 93% attendance, but we're telling you that 93% conceals 15% of kids who are chronically absent. And we're telling you that despite everything that's been said, we've got 30 and 40% of our kids not ready for school. And this is what happens in September. There is, I sense among educators across the country, a reluctance to have that conversation because they're so accustomed to data being used as a weapon against them. So accustomed of being blamed, so accustomed of being accused of making excuses for failure, that they're going to be reluctant to come into the conversation. And so you're going to have to get the public libraries, the public housing developments, and public schools. And you're going to have to create a very different context, a very different culture for that conversation to happen around the new compact. But I am as certain as I am about anything else that if you could do that, that would be transformative for this community, and it would be transformative for this nation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. It was rousing. It was rousing. All right. We have a lot of very special guests in the house. I'm blinded by the light, so I can't tell who's here. But I know that at least 4 of the parents who participated in the Parent University and the Eagle Academy are here in the house. I'm just going to say their names, or they said they would be. Tanisha Curry, Katie Johnson, Joy Most, and Jessica Campbell. I know I saw Joy Most on the way in, but let's give them a round of applause for their courage. And her sweet little daughter. In the spirit of grade level reading, Georgia Cord and Jennifer McFeeters from Bookstore One will present them after the show with a nice little gift certificate that you can use to buy a book or 2 or how many ever for your children. And so I think that's a very kind gesture for them. And let me just conclude by saying, we got to get the plug in here. We have this new nice web page dedicated to these events. It's heraldtribune.com/hot topics, right? It's brand new, it looks nice, and we're going to have content from this event, links to grade level reading, other Herald Tribune content, and all kind of good stuff. And that means I have to thank Charles Clapsaddle and his crack staff from Manatee Educational TV. They provided the sound and the video. This will be up on their YouTube channel within a day or a couple days-ish. So you can go to, what is that?
METV Web.
METVweb.com, or we'll have a link to Charles's site as well on ours. So that should be good. Please go visit. There's some really nice stuff there. We're going to keep adding. Ralph Smith is committed to a guest column in the somewhat near future, kind of wrapping up his visit. We've got guest columns on school readiness, absenteeism, and summer learning. Those will be coming. So we really want to keep this momentum going. Shelby Webb, my colleague in the newsroom, will be writing about this tomorrow, and I think all of Ralph's whirlwind tour. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my friend John Annis.
Good job.
And most of all, thank you to Ralph Smith and Barbara Shirley. Thank you for all of y'all for coming. Drive safe, happy reading, good night. Good, thank you.